Make sure that I'm streaming. Yeah, it's on all pages. It's on my personal page, my page, and Center for Hip Hop Advocacy's page. Hello, everybody who's tuned in to the pre-show. If you know, this is the pre-show to the before the party, before the after party, after the before show, after the before party. This is Hip Hop Can Save America Live. You are looking on the back behind the scenes cam, and you're watching me get ready. You're listening to me stall. I don't really have to stall. What I'm doing is I'm allowing people to trickle in for the live stream. Our guest is here in the green room, as it were, and we will get ready to kick it in a few minutes. This is the first time we have a returning guest. This is exciting, so it's pretty dope. So that'll be exciting. Shouts to Silent Night on the check-in. Already primed and ready. Silent Night, of course, was mentioned yesterday in depth in the Newsbeat episode. We had the my cohorts from Newsbeat podcast, the award-winning podcast that mixes social justice journalism and hip hop, with including original lyrics from artists like Silent Night. It was a great, really in-depth conversation. We had clips from the show, and I haven't put that to the podcast feed yet, but I will. I'm editing it just so it sounds super nice. Shouts to Tom Larotte, Miami Beach. Tom Larotte, OG in this game. Good to see you, sir. Appreciate you for checking in. And yeah, if you haven't been tuned in and don't know what this is the live version of the Hip Hop Can Save America podcast. I will start the show soon, officially, and then I'll banter for a little bit. I'm going to share a bit of news that I came across that I think is pretty cool. And then we'll cut to our guest and get to chatting. Again, first-time return guest, so we will get updates on his life and work. And that'll be that. I can see you in the comments section. Shouts to Rissa. Shouts to Tom again. Shouts to Silent Night. So do feel free to comment as we go. Say hi to each other. Talk amongst yourselves. Say hi to me. You can praise me and say nice things about me. You can critique me, but I'll just cut you out. No, I'm just kidding. You can critique me. It's fine. Programming note. Yesterday's podcast live didn't go on the podcast feed, but all podcasts that are live will make it to the podcast feed, so you can subscribe there as well. And I'll be mentioning that as the show starts in just a couple seconds. Just letting a lot of people trickle in and get situated. Plus, I got a lot of windows open. This is a technological marvel what I do here for y'all. It's ridiculous. I need Shuri up in here to help me with all this. All right. All right, y'all. Let's get it going, because I do have a little housekeeping, and then I have a piece of news, and then we'll get into our guests. So I don't want to keep people waiting too long. Appreciate y'all for checking in. All right. You can't see this guest, but there's a theme song, and it starts now.
The thing about hip-hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Pop culture is more than music.
Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do when there is for you.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live.
So hip-hop didn't invent anything, but hip-hop reinvented everything.
Yes, y'all. It's your man, Manny Faces, back with another episode of Hip Hop Can Save America. Live. Crazy. So if you've been a follower of the podcast for some time, you know how I used to do it. Long sit-down edited interviews with luminaries from fields like education and artistry and the fine arts and mental health counseling, and just a slew of professionals and artistic and creatives who have been using hip hop in wildly inventive and innovative ways in areas outside of entertainment. So we talk about areas like education, science and technology, health and wellness, politics and social justice, the fine arts, spirituality, all these other, plumbing. I can make a case for it. Hip hop can be used in all of these areas in any aspect, entrepreneurialism, in every aspect of society. And a hip hop mindset, a hip hop ethos, authentically introduced and participating can enhance that thing. So this show is the way to prove that. And I bring on people with the receipts, and then we talk about it, and we blow minds all across the world. For the month of September, we're also doing this. Live streams Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. I decided that pandemic life wasn't complicated enough, and I would do this too. So I have a whole technological smorgasbord of things happening to try to make this work. I appreciate you for riding with me so far. We've done about 6 or 7 of these. It's been wonderful. We've had Silent Night, again, social justice, sort of that theme, dialect, an acclaimed playwright. We've had Adam Seven talking about longevity as an independent artist. Dr. Marty Kaysen, mathematics and how to teach teachers to use hip hop in the classroom to enhance education. We had, and of course, the Newsbeat folks, we had legendary hip-hop photographer Ernie Panicoli. Come on, what a great talk that was. So you can catch all of these things back on wherever you're watching me now, they're all there. And of course, do subscribe to the podcast. You'll get bonus episodes and of course, all the back catalog, as it were. So that's that. Housekeeping. Yesterday's Newsbeat episode was long, and I'm editing it because I want to make sure that all the clips from our Newsbeat podcast episodes are properly represented, and it's just nice and cleaned up. So it didn't go up on a podcast feed. It's coming. I may do that as the Friday drop this week. It's a whole thing, but you'll get it, and then this will go up as well. So that all being said, when I started this show, I wanted to bring you sort of an enlightening piece of news every time we started and got together. I didn't do all that up until now because technology. We're finally kind of gotten into a good rhythm. The guest was nice and early. Everything's proper and lovely. So just a taste of what I was trying to do. And you can see this on the screen if you're watching, and I'll talk it up for the people on the podcast feed. This is an interesting piece of news. Next week on September 15th, I guess maybe is that this week? Is that Saturday? I don't know dates anymore. Sotheby's. I feel like I should say the story like this. Sotheby's will have their first hip-hop auction. So Sotheby's, of course, a very famous auction house, deals with big expense, high-ticket items, big auctions, thousands and millions of dollars, artwork, throughout the centuries. We'll actually be having a hip-hop auction, and it'll include some memorabilia from Tupac and Biggie. I believe the crown worn, as you see there in the famous photograph by Baron Claiborne, the crown that Biggie wore. I think there's also going to be some other artifacts from lesser known but no less important individuals from hip hop history, including Andre Leroy Davis, who many will know was the illustrator for the Source magazine. You turn to the back and be the last word. Andre Leroy Davis, it's a doctor of art. Will be having some stuff represented there. And shouts to him. I just noticed as I was looking all this up that he is making hip-hop flavored masks from some of his iconic illustration. So it's interesting. There's an article about it on artandobject.com about Tupac and Biggie memorabilia at Sotheby's first hip-hop auction. I don't know how I feel about that. It's an interesting debate to have, whenever we have hip-hop kind of crossing over into these wildly capitalistic or just a whole nother range. What does that mean for the culture? It's interesting. Maybe we'll ask our guest what he thinks. And with that, back to the main scene. So one thing I want to tell you is that that's an interesting article about hip hop that you may or may not find in hip hop media outlets. we do have a really great newsletter that curates and puts out articles like this. So again, innovative, outside of the box, non-gossipy stuff, ways to look at hip hop music and culture. And you could sign up for that newsletter at hiphopadvocacy.org. It's absolutely free. Comes out every now and then. I want to say every 2 weeks, but it's not every 2 weeks, but it should be. And maybe it will in the near future. So all that being said, housekeeping and a nice piece of interesting news, sort of as a plug for the newsletter. I curate those articles. They're really fascinating. They don't come from hip hop media sites. Interestingly enough, another topic for another day. So moving along, as you can see by the words on your screen and by the words on the podcast app, today's guest is Mikal Amin. He will be joining us in 2 seconds when I press the button. Now, he's our first returning guest, season 1, I guess, as it were, of this podcast. We talked to Mikal. He has a long storied history himself as a teaching artist, an artist, as well, and someone who kind of, interestingly enough, with the Sotheby's thing, which was random, I didn't make this connection, but has always kind of had sort of a foot inside the culture and inside institutions. We'll talk, I think, a little bit more about that, but I'm very pleased and honored to have back for the second time, back like he never left, Mr. Mikal Amin. How you doing, sir?
Oh, my man, what's good? Forever fresh as well. How you doing, Manny?
That's what it is. Good to see you. Really good to see you. We know each other in real life, and we see each other. We run into each other often enough. I think, and of course, in the past few months,
you stalk me.
Anybody?
You follow me. You stalk me.
But I use binoculars now because social distancing. So it's good to see you.
Yes, it's always, man. Always. I'm glad you're well.
Thanks, man, and same to you, and same to the wife and everyone else. So, that being said, welcome back to Hip Hop to Save America. Thank you for doing this with me. We're live this month, so it's kind of crazy. But I wanted to reach out to you to kind of catch up a little bit. You've always had, like I said, little mini intro here, feet in several. It's like you have more than 2 feet because you got like 7 feet in different directions that have to do with intersection of hip hop and other areas, including education, including performing arts, including fine arts, including institutions. So please, for the people, let them know how you present yourself to the world right now professionally. Name, rank, and serial number. What you do. Kind of on a day-to-day.
Let me do the short CV. Let me try to do that one. Mikal Amin. Yes, I am a hip hop artist, educator, curator, and writer as well. So, been in New York for the last 20 years, and been in the New York City underground for a long time. I got my start as a teaching artist in 2006, and since then I been the director of programming for Urban Warrior NYC. Most recently, I serve as one of the education managers at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. I'm also their curator and co-curator with Baba Israel, shouts to Baba, and producer for their hip hop and spoken word performance event, Word Sound Power. I also am a hip hop facilitator and researcher with Ciphers for Justice, which was originally housed out of Columbia University's Institute of Urban Minority Education, UMI for short. And yeah, I think that's it. Husband, cat whisperer.
There's a lot of well, I was about to say, like, there's a lot of smart, like, you got to be smart to do a lot of that stuff. You really got to be smart to do the last 2.
Yes. Trust.
I appreciate that. This is the world's smartest hip hop podcast, if you didn't know. So it just lets us know the caliber of the folks that we talk to, that array of work. Where are you most active these days in general? And I guess keeping coronavirus pandemic in mind, that maybe we're not doing as many ancillary hustles that we might have had underway before. Where do you spend most of your time on today?
Well, it's funny that you said that. Ironically enough, this pandemic actually has gotten me back to, kind of getting back into my bag on some of the other things. BAM takes up so much of my time. I'm still creating music. I just put out a song, COVID-16. Shouts to DJ Neo in Genoa, Italy. He asked me to do a piece, and I've been working on the color challenge with my wife, Dale. But, most of the time I'm usually at BAM working with young people with theater and poetry, running those programs. But actually, I've been sitting in my apartment and teaching. I've been having private lessons with students, as well as working with some friends of mine's organization. Shouts to Urban Explorers and Raquel Simon, who brought me in a couple of weeks ago. I'll be working with Queens College. So I've been actually doing more teaching, kind of getting back to really, that's like my first love, honestly, more so than sitting at the desk. I love being, with young people, working with young people. If I'm not on the stage, I'd rather be in the classroom. Those are the two places that I feel the most comfortable, and I feel like I do the best work.
When you say teaching, give me some idea of what kind of stuff you guys are working on together.
Oh, absolutely. So, and it runs a range. I teach a myriad of different things, but right now I was working with young people with hip hop history. They were creating music and documentary films and visual art, kind of addressing some of the issues that these young people are facing directly right now. And along with Baba Israel, who was the main instructor, I was just a guest artist that came in. But I was asked to kind of speak to them a little bit about like the power of hip hop and its ability as a vehicle and sort of a megaphone to amplify a lot of the issues that that are happening on a day-to-day, and how hip-hop's role has always been that in some way, shape, form, or fashion, even when it was really about the jam, about the party, about doing all of those things. And then I also have been doing private freestyle and rhyme writing lessons. So I've been working with some young people that have been wanting to basically learn the craft of rhyme writing and develop freestyle skills. So I've been teaching that most recently, and I'll go into Queens College and work with the students with the YPAR, Youth Participatory Action Research, that they'll be doing, and doing some similar things like that, helping them craft songs, helping them craft stories from sort of like a hip hop aesthetic and feel. And that's mostly what I'm usually teaching. Anything around sort of the craft of hip hop, the history of hip hop, the story of hip hop.
Well, and again, it's always intersected because it's always through performance or through writing or through being creative. It's interesting. The first part, obviously, we've had Silent Night on here. I've talked to yesterday's episode was with the Newsbeat podcast crew, my guys, and of course we use hip hop to amplify social justice issues from a journalism point of view, both musically and original lyrics, and sort of that storytelling aspect of hip hop. When you say you're teaching young people and you have this idea that hip hop has always, like you said, even when it's been about the party, always had that. There's a lot of people that feel like that doesn't exist anymore as much as it did. Certainly on the radio, sort of the mainstream corporate controlled stuff. But I like to remind them that, the power wasn't always in movements, wasn't always on TV. The revolution was not always televised.
Still ain't.
Right.
Still ain't.
Right. It's what's happening on the streets. It's what's happening on a sort of more intimate level, grassroots stuff. And with that, the stuff you talk about right there, hip hop still does that in leaps and bounds. You'd agree?
Absolutely. Well, and this is, and you and I always have this conversation when we get more than 5 minutes to catch up.
Yeah.
And from my vantage point, the way I look at it is this: I think it's impact, and I think the thing that is confusing for individuals now is because I will say this, in some ways, corporate America won. They kind of got the body shell of hip hop. They didn't really get the spirit, the heart, and the soul of it, right. But they definitely figured out how to dress it up, do sort of a doppelganger thing, and make you feel as if your fave is doing some like powerful, impactful thing. When really, right. If you really kind of get behind the nuts and bolts of it, they're not really making these institutions uncomfortable. They're not making the status quo uncomfortable. They're actually helping cloak them to kind of keep things at the status quo. But at our level, at your level, what's really the impact is felt because young people are coming up with new and better solutions. Because they're having this critical eye. And a paper that I'm actually getting published in December around my practice as a hip hop artist in research spaces kind of discusses this and talking about, how it's inside of the concept of critical hip hop pedagogy, but really looking at it from the standpoint of the practice, creating actual hip hop art, using the forms, and in that process, developing critical thinking strengthening those things. What you find is when young people are sort of immersed and engaging in telling their story and looking at their reality through this sort of critical lens that hip hop is just naturally about, you see things that emerge. You see a an appetite to be more active in community, an appetite to find solutions that are not being really discussed or really followed by, maybe some people around my age or a little older or that have bigger titles are not doing. Because what we really understand is that everything that's going on right now is as intended. The way the pandemic is being dealt with as intended, the way your electoral politics work as intended. It's not going to change because we're actually really not making ourselves individually and collectively uncomfortable enough to really think about something different. What we want to do is we want an alternative version of it. It's kind of like saying, we're eating ice cream and I want a new dessert, and it's vanilla ice cream, but I want something different. So then instead of just going and getting a piece of apple pie, we're like, well, you know what? We'll put some sprinkles on it. Now it's different. No, I'm still eating vanilla ice cream. Still ice cream.
Right. Ice cream's the problem. Damn it.
You're right. But I think hip hop at its core, at its spirit, it is always gone against the status quo, without question.
Right.
It has always been counterculture. It has always been anti-establishment, anti-mainstream. And this is a little bit what I kind of talk to about with young people. And I should say it wasn't teaching them, it's more like showing them, because they're already there. But, if you're 16, 17 years old, right, you were not around in 1973. You weren't around in 1982.
Right.
And what I always talk about is this idea of a continuum. Whereas what you're feeling and experiencing as a young person, it's not too different, not far off from what people when they were 16 and 17, 30, 40 years ago. Right. And what they did was that they created this thing. They created this ability to come together. They created this ability to be seen and heard and felt on a scale that could not be denied, that could not be ignored. Right. And the power was evident in that. So I talked to them a little bit about that. So when you think about it from that standpoint, from a political standpoint, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, this is more for the people in the back and the people on the stream. But when you consider that a place like the South Bronx, which is still one of the poorest districts in the continental United States, and you had individuals and young people who had zero resources afforded to them, whether in public schools, whether in their local neighborhoods. Everything possible that could have been taken away from them was. And what they did was they innovated, they adapted, they created, they manifested. Now, they didn't have to have a slogan, they didn't have to have a picket line, they didn't have to come up with some organizational drive. It's political in of themselves, as they were able to assert their identity and their reality and their existence in their own way and being. That, in a lot of ways, is the true essence, spirit, and core of what hip-hop is about. The adapt, innovate, change, create, manifest, and speak truth to power, and speak it loudly, and speak it aggressively. And I think that is something, when you think about that, and you put that up against, say, someone like Kanye West. You put that up against someone, say like Vance Jones, Candace Owens. You realize that's not really doing anything but maintaining this status quo bubble. Y'all just talking in the same circles in the same way, space, or shape. But because we have so many of us that are so busy, listen, you got a large family, you have, a full-time job, right? You know what I mean? Brilliant, entrepreneurial pursuits on top of the full-time job. You kind of like to have a personal life. When can you have time to really sit down, think, recharge, reflect, move forward? And to your credit, you clearly do, because you're continuing to grow, you're continuing to build. You're an amazing individual, but it's really difficult for most of us on a day-to-day to really get to that point. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the thing that's going to be the least resistance. We're going to put faith and hope that people above us and that are outside of us are looking out for us. Right. And it's difficult to accept when they're failing. And that's what we're seeing right now. I think if the pandemic did nothing else, aside from put so many of us through some horrendous suffering, and really sort of made things very, very difficult for a large swath of us. What I think it did do, though, is it ripped the mask off a little bit. I think it's a little bit harder now, post COVID, to really ignore that there's something deeply wrong with our country, fundamentally so, at an institutional level, at a foundational level. It's very hard to ignore that any longer. You can't really have a conversation that doesn't start with that fact.
That's true.
Right? But something like hip hop has always been talking about these things. How do we treat workers? How do we treat young people?
Right.
The messed up education system.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
criminal justice.
Criminal justice. You and I, again, we talk about this all the time. It's like, y'all late. Hip hop been here. Y'all late.
Right.
Thanks for showing up. We've been sitting here with a cup of coffee, chilling out, had a Danish, talked about the local news. Thanks for showing up. You're about, I don't know, a couple decades behind. But that's cool you showed up. Thank you.
Now, maybe pay attention to the things we're talking about now, which is the next thing that you got to catch up to, because we're doing that too. We're very much, we're futurism in hip hop. You know what I mean? We're already on, figuring out the next things and trying to solve the problems. That's an amazing way to look at it, and you encapsulate so much of what I try to, say sometimes. That not everything, hip hop glitters is gold. That celebrity influence may be nice, but isn't the end all be all. Shouldn't be looked at as necessarily the spokespeople for the rest of the culture or the movements or the activities that are being done. A lot of that is there too. And again, to dismiss the younger people who are again part of this movement, when you look at how social media has become part of how information or misinformation gets sent around, the fact that there's a black Twitter in Twitter, like a lot of these things happen sort of from a hip-hop ethos that are still, like you say, hacking and breaking and inventing and being innovative within the systems and structures that we have. So when I look at all that and I say, well, there's really no better group of people that are equipped any better to figure out how to fix these giant problems and correct these institutional, systemic problems.
Yeah. And I think what people should also remember and realize too, not to try to, take any more or less credit than what is deserved, but I think people should realize and note things like Black Twitter, things like social media in general. And that's a whole other conversation, because I do have some critiques about the digital space.
Sure.
But
there's plenty to critique.
But to your point, the individuals that we see that have really kind of taken a hold of that medium in these tools and repurpose them, refashion them in a way that could be beneficial, it's the hip hop generation. Yeah. Right. It's those of us born in the mid 70s through the early to mid 80s that have the ability to adapt, the ability to have the language of the past, but also have the understanding and the ability to kind of utilize what's next, what's new, what's now, and repurpose it. Those are the things that we're talking about, like the spirit of hip hop. Right. Because there's the practical, and I definitely fall in that realm of like the practical, the craft of it, the power of those things. But also, if you, like you said, when we talk about the culture and the spirit and the ethos, it's those types of things that people are discussing and what matters.
When we talked about, and we danced around this a couple times already getting here, but when we talk about sort of bringing that hip-hop spirit, ethos, great word for it, that I love to use all the time now. Shouts to Craig Arthur. I think he was the co-author of a paper and breaking down hip-hop as ethos. And I hope I got it right. It's a great paper. I'll share it. But bringing it into institutions that you're not trying to necessarily break the system. You're not necessarily trying to, tear it inside out, but you're trying to adapt to it or bring it into under these roofs. I talk about the necessity for hip hop to be serious hip hop programming to exist in museums and libraries. I think that, so these age old institutions that exist to give the wealth of knowledge to the people, that you can't not include something as large and influential and awesome as hip hop. Your work with BAM, bringing it into BAM. I think when we first talked on the show, you were still early in the BAM career. I think I have to go back and listen.
I was.
What does your work at the great Brooklyn Academy of Music consist of, and how have you navigated and found ways to bring that hip hop sensibility? How open have they been to it? What have you been able to accomplish? What do
Oh,
you
for sure.
do?
And let me I do want to say before again just a quick note just to kind of like
Yeah, yeah.
understand where my orientation comes from. I personally am someone I think that is open to willing and wanting to see these kind of larger structures sort of not be adapted but sort of dissipate. They've
I,
I think in a lot of ways they've outlived their usefulness.
I'm with you.
I think that structurally they're not really designed really ever to be truly inclusive. With that said, though, I will say this, and this is what I'll talk about with in respect specifically to BAM, but could be talking about every institution.
Right.
They're here now. For all intents and purposes, they're not going away. Two things. There's a vast amount of resources that they have at their disposal
Right.
that they're willing to utilize.
Right.
And more importantly, they gonna do what they gonna do anyway. So
Right.
I see myself, fortunately, we'll see after the people see this podcast. I might not I might not be anywhere. I might be back in the street. But I mean, I've been saying this for yeah.
We don't want no trouble.
I definitely be nibbling at the toe, the fingernails sometimes. But
Right.
but in all intents and I've had this discussion with my directors and executives, and they know where I stand. I've positioned myself as someone that's like, if you're going to represent the culture, and I'm not the only one. There's many other people that I know and see and feel and respect inside these places that are culture bearers, not specifically at BAM, but in other places where it's you gonna do it anyway.
Right. Right.
Let me at least be in there to make sure that it's done respectfully, that it's done properly, that it's done
Right.
legitimately. And at
Authentic
the same
and all that.
time, exactly. And at the same time, you know, taking advantage of the resources that they have at their disposal that they're going to utilize anyway. So with all of that said, I've been fortunate. I have a pretty free reign. I don't want to call it free reign because I definitely have to answer to folks, and I definitely take into consideration, you know, my VP, shouts to Coco Killingsworth, and our director of education, Stephen McIntosh, and associate director Ava McKenzie, or Ava Kinsey. They absolutely, you know, they're in the conversation. I definitely am not just like running around and just doing stuff, but they respect and trust my expertise. And my experience and where I'm positioned. So I say all that to say I'm able to bring in authentic voices. I'm able to
Liaise.
not have their messages censored. When someone like Timothy Dwight can unedited call out white supremacy and gentrification in his piece to a largely white audience, and when some of that audience responds back to BAM upset by this, what do? We double down. You know, he was able to go back out and then actually put a whole new section part into his piece, specifically addressing that individual.
Yeah.
You know, not by name, you know, but the situation and the circumstance.
Right.
So,
The
you know,
thought behind it. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
it's so from that standpoint, what I will give credit to BAM is that they understand what is necessary and required if it's going to be hip hop, at least within the department that I work in, and I've been fortunate enough to inherit the platform. And I know that work really is because of a couple of individuals in particular, and most specifically Dr. John Foster, who was my predecessor, who came before me and really laid all of that out. I mean, I definitely have my battles to fight still, but he fought the wars and won. So I'm benefiting from the wars he's won. So
speak about it from a more holistic view of this concept, right? So we'll come back to BAM specifically, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But when you look at what is happening at BAM, again, what you've seen happen before, the paved the way, got in, what you have to put up with, how accommodating they are, you're saying it's a good situation. BAM is good. They do it all right. I'm sure you've seen other institutions around the globe, because you're a global guy, where although outside of the U.S., we probably have better examples than inside the U.S. as well, probably. just generally speaking, holistically, where do institutions fail? You mentioned a little bit the authenticity, bringing in the authentic voices. I guess, the ivory tower syndrome. But where do institutions, whether it be academic, cultural, you know, where do they
Where do they fail?
Yeah, where does the director of these things who want, because it's all about inclusivity and diverse now, and belonging. We have to make sure everyone's included. And what do you say? What's your thoughts on that in general?
I'll be very frank.
I'm sure you will.
Where I where most of we, you know what I mean. I don't know why I always do the precursor. But if you know me anything, I'm an Aries. I'm like, here it comes. But
yeah,
where I see them consistently failing, and in my biased view, I think that they fail way worse and more often outside of the United States than inside of the United States. Inside of the United States as a part, like Europe, Asia, they've done a lot better with these things, in my personal opinion, actually, than the United States. We're
Right.
horrible. We're behind them.
Right. Okay. Well, I've only been to Europe, so maybe that's why I got that that skewed view.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. They
Shouts to the Hip Hop Culture Center in Paris. Shouts to
Dortmund University, Dortmunder U in Germany. Yeah. Rotterdam's amazing stuff going over in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, but where they fail.
Yeah,
is really that the authenticity. They don't bring, shouts to a good friend and associate, Rockefeller. She talks about this all the time. Anytime anyone will listen to her, or Quick Step, Full Circle Crew in effect. They never look at the artists and the culture bearers as experts.
Right.
We're the aside. We're the addendum to what they want to do.
Right.
So what ends up happening?
The sprinkles on the ice cream.
Exactly. So where they almost always fail is that when they bring us into a museum, into an academic space, into an institution, they don't give us the full power and scope that should be afforded in order to make that exhibit happen, to make that event happen, to produce that program. We're at best, most of the time, we're consultants. Like, no, what you probably should do is give us a budget, give us a title, and run the thing.
Yeah.
The difficulty with that always is that, again, when you start getting into truth seeking and truth telling, then you might tell on yourself. Institutions, usually in size, are not really prepared. I've told people this inside and outside of BAM, like, and this is not a direct anything towards BAM. This is just how this is the size of anything. We see it with our government. But moving institutions is like trying to move an ocean liner with a canoe oar into a new direction. It's just, there's just so many moving parts. There's so many agendas. There's so many constituents. There's so many concerns. There's so many people that have to have a say, be a part, have to be fed, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But right is right. Okay. If something is damaging, if it's limiting to anyone or everyone, then it needs to just go back to the drawing board. Institutions are just collectively not designed to move swift enough to really do that. So in the case of hip hop, and this is something, and this is kind of a shot across the bow to some of the older heads, not the legends, but like just old, like, I'm 43, so like there's a lot of cats. And I definitely have a little bit of the get off my lawn in me sometimes too. But like, if we're really about this hip hop, y'all, then we know hip hop is always trying to come up with the new next thing. It is always pushing to the left of center. It is always trying to do the thing that's out the box and different. Right. So oftentimes, the ones that have the biggest problem with say the current generation or the newer generation is like, yeah, you got old. Like, and you forgot what hip hop actually is. What I see a lot of times, older heads, they kind of got caught up into the commercial hype too. It's like hip hop wasn't about the radio,
right?
Hip hop wasn't about being the star. Y'all know this. Y'all know this. Y'all are from that era. Y'all know this. So why are you now mad because people are looking to do things different and be different? You knew that was the whole thing. Be original. That was the whole thing.
I often say, you try to put something in a box that inherently is not supposed to be in a box. Let it be outside the box.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, I think, if if you know a little bit about like anthropology, or if you study it a little bit, you do know that with any form, um, at some point it calcifies, right? And I think that's the weird thing, and that's going to be the test case,
It's interesting.
honestly, for hip hop. Well,
Yeah.
think about it. You look at rock, you look at jazz,
Sure.
you look at blues. You know, at some point, once they become commodified and once they become accepted, because there is a positive to that. There is a
Yeah.
positive to that. But you realize, like, the innovation, the expression, those things begin to become sort of stagnant because of that. Because, well, now it's like, well, if everybody's doing it and you can get
Right.
it on the radio as opposed to going to the juke joint,
Yeah, but
then
hip hop is more than just the genre. You know what I mean?
well,
That's what's its saving
exactly.
grace because it has everything behind it, and there's it maybe that it could break out of the calcification a little bit, or to use your
Yeah, well, and that's the test case,
yeah
because there hasn't been, and I've been talking to I mean, I talk with Radar Ellis, dope DJ, professor at
shouts.
Berkeley,
Yep.
yeah, Baxter Words, dope artist, MC, uh, host of numerous things, including EO Dub and the Poll will be televised all the time. We talk all the time,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we always talk about is sort of like what's after hip hop, because nothing's been invented, nothing genuinely different and new
Right.
from a music standpoint. We'll start with, say, music. Everything is now just sort of like a variation on this idea of hip hop.
Right.
And
Grandmaster Caz says hip hop didn't invent anything, but hip hop reinvented everything.
everything,
And that's it. It's nothing
everything.
now. There's like, and especially in music and the things pop culture that doesn't have hip hop DNA in it,
Yeah,
which of course has DNA.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
By the way, quick edit. I'm glad you brought up. Shout out to Kaz too. Kaz was I got the pleasure about a few
Uh,
weeks ago to sit down and interview him,
oh,
um,
nice.
for the young people. That brother is, I mean, as real as they come, man.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
real,
yeah.
real as they come, man.
Yeah, and yeah,
True
we,
legend.
we talk about the elders, the elder folk of the music and the culture still around, and get them while you can, man. And
For
it's,
real.
it's really valuable to do that. Again, Ernie Panicoli on here the other day was just a great, and I've talked to Joe Conzo before, just from the photographer, the visual capturing of the culture. It was an amazing talk. You geek out a little bit.
Yeah, giants among us walking around. You're like,
Word up.
yeah,
Well, your philosophical look at all this is really enlightening. I love having these conversations, and of course, they are like, I feel like we should be sitting on the lawn of some institution at Oxford having these philosophical discussions about what happens after hip hop. Is hip hop, But again, I think that's what makes the culture so beautiful. It's so adaptable. It is so flexible and can encompass so many things. I don't want to get into what's going to happen after hip hop.
I have no clue.
Man, listen.
I have no
and
idea.
and it may just be iterations upon iterations ad infinite.
Well, you know what? Sometimes too. I mean, I said this to people as well. I think I might be too old.
Right.
It might already be happening already, and I'm just not in that space.
I'm sure-
I've said that too.
Yeah.
There might be some kid laughing somewhere like, look at these old dudes talking about everything done. Dude. We done,
Right.
y'all, we late.
I
You
think,
know what I mean? So
look, I think that I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? I think what the younger folks, younger artists are doing is incredibly innovative, incredibly progressive. Just twisting genres, genre bending, and doing all things. You could talk about it from a musical standpoint. Is it authentic? Is it traditional? Is it purist? Is it is it even rap anymore when there's kind of sing song and all these things that people have these discussions about? But again, it comes back to sort of that ethos, that spirit of innovation and experimentation and going against the grain, which I think really does lead to solutions way more than it leads to problems.
yeah, absolutely. And again, I think when you think about hip hop from its purest sense, that's literally what it is. It's a solution seeker. It looks at situations, it looks at circumstances, it identifies it, calls it out, and then it figures out a way around it, through it,
Yeah.
ways to change it on its terms. And I think that's exactly why it had to be commodified the quickest, probably, and why it was very much so had to have a commercial doppelganger. That's why
Yeah, it's
politicians
interesting.
had to latch onto it. Why corporate had, because it's
Right.
like, oh my God, there's this thing that's super sexy, super attractive.
Right.
Everyone wants to be part of it, down
We
with
better
it.
control it.
Yeah, it
We
can,
better.
and it inspires people to do this and that, and you know, this person says that they want to be down with it and on it. Oh, we can't let this run around willy nilly. We got to get our piece in
Yeah.
it. We got to have our version of it. There's a great novel called Mumbo Jumbo, and Ishmael Reed is the author, and in it there's a individual, basically the Knights Templar, really quick. And what they do is that they realize that there is this Yoruba priest, Papa Legba, that has the ability to really like galvanize the community, not through any type of magic or anything, but just because he's speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And they're trying to corrupt all of these black young people in Harlem in this novel. And what the Knights Templar realize is like, well, what we need is a doppelganger. We need a black machina. So they created a doppelganger. They created a black face that looked and talked the jive,
Yeah. Yeah.
but said the things that they wanted him to say. And it's so funny
That's
because that's a
interesting.
fiction novel that Ishmael Reed wrote 40 something years ago. But then you see it now. You
Right.
see it in Candace Owens. You
Right.
see it in Kanye.
Kanye West. I was about to say that's really interesting.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You see these individuals that are basically puppets for this like larger mainstream thing
Right.
that have been stamped.
Let me ask
they're
you:
official.
are they willing puppets or are they unwilling puppets?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I think my bias says they are. I think though my logical, rational brain goes, I don't know these people.
Yeah.
I don't know their personal. And I think this is the danger about the digital world. We think we know everyone. We
True.
think that what people show us on a screen,
Yeah.
what they put in their feed, that's them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize like that's a curation.
Sure.
That's a piece and a part, and they're able to construct what you want, what they want you to see.
Right.
We don't know what this person is going
Right.
through.
You think
in
I'm
their
drinking
day-to-day.
coffee? I ain't drinking coffee.
Right. hey.
I'm just saying.
Don't incriminate yourself.
I'm a grown man.
You know what I mean? Hey, listen.
Go ahead.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, so it's like there's definitely been part of me like they know he's, and then I'm like, well, and it's funny too because
Interesting.
when I saw the news about Kanye basically being on very very strong psychotic medications and him not willingly taking them.
Right.
And that coming out, and that's been something that the internet had long been talking about and saying that was the case. And like, well,
Right.
you know what? I'm definitely kind of like one of those people where like I need proof. I don't believe you. You're saying that, and
Right.
I'm down to be wrong later. But
Sure.
you just saying it, you need to show it to me. I need to.
course.
I need the facts and the evidence. Don't just say
Right.
something's happening and I'm supposed to take your word on it because I don't expect people to take my word on anything.
Sure.
If I'm saying something, well, here's the book. Here's the author. Here's the authority. Here's the expert. Here's the
Right.
data.
Right.
So I'm just
Multiple sources. I need to,
Yes,
and I come
like-
to a critical thinking conclusion.
everything else is opinion and conjecture in
Right.
my
course.
opinion. So like, give me the thing. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, so you know what? How balanced is Kanye really? Like
Right.
really, how balanced is he? And that's out of concern for the brother, not like
100%.
It's like that's real, right? So
The
I don't-
the empathetic side got to come out at some point and say, yeah, it's damaging. Yeah, it's, there's so many things wrong with it. But if there is legitimately something wrong with, and not say him, anybody,
Yeah,
the president, there's something in your head.
Let's be clear. I can empathize and sympathize with whatever is going on in his personal life, and also still say he needs to sit down.
100%.
Someone needs to go put him somewhere.
100%.
And I'm definitely not following this dude, and definitely what he's saying is not good and dangerous. With
So he
that
doesn't.
said,
So he doesn't have your vote.
he
I'm
definitely
guessing.
don't got my vote. But with that said, and this is, and I think we're in a moment now. We've been in this moment where like people really have to understand what it means to be critical thinkers. How to take information
That's
and
it.
really think about the totality of a situation and a circumstance, and realizing like, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
you can chew bubble gum and walk too. So there's always, not always, I won't say always, but more than likely than not, it's not either or. It's
Right.
and.
Right. The
It's
truth is somewhere in the middle, or
It's
or a sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where we're kind of at in this country. We're so polarized. It's either this
Right.
or this. And it's like, it's almost never that. It's
Right.
usually and there's usually a reason why it is so whatever it seems, what extreme or crazy or whatever have you. But we're not in a space right now as a nation, as human beings, honestly, on a mass scale, to be able to hold a lot of different things and have it make sense. And only makes sense if it's, hey, it's this.
Yeah.
It's this rock. It's only this.
Right.
No, actually, it's a little bit more than that. And I think
critical thinking. Not to cut you off. Critical thinking. Media. What's the word I'm looking for? I should actually have more coffee, perhaps. Media literacy. Media literacy is, these things are very important. I think hip hop can help teach these things. We talk about critical thinking. We know that hip hop can be used in classrooms to teach sort of rote memorization, subject matter things. But there's something to that artistic, creative lens that you can look through things, and that maybe helps expand your mindset out of those polarized positions. Yeah.
Well, this is the beauty of it, absolutely, and that's the root of critical hip hop pedagogy. That's what essentially Akan was talking about when he was talking about critical hip hop pedagogy. It's because hip hop comes primarily from marginalized and disenfranchised communities. By looking at its content, you can reveal things around misogyny, racism, homophobia, classism, all of the isms that are the social ills of our day and time through looking at the work, the product, the lifestyle. And from there, you can kind of extrapolate these things to take a deeper and closer look at the who's, the what's, the why's, the how's, and the when's. So that's critical hip hop pedagogy at the 101 definition of it.
Yeah.
For the work that I do and the work that YPAR does, we're taking that in a slightly different direction. One of your former guests on this show, Dr. Bettina Love, takes it another slight step further, closer to where I'm taking it, where it's just like, yes, hip hop is powerful for that, but there's also something to be said in the practice of it as well. And the practice of it can be from the cultural standpoint of it, participating in an event, supporting something. The step that I take about it in my paper is like, no, all of that's true. However, its greatest strength is when you're actually able to create. And through the process of that creation, you're developing all of those things and getting a deeper understanding of yourself, of the world around you, and developing all of those skills that we're talking about: problem solving, critical thinking, listening, all of those things by sitting down with a beat, making a song in my case. But if I was Rockefeller, it's getting to the understanding of how, creating movement and defining movement and producing movement. Hip hop as a pedagogical practice can end, and you already had Dialect on here, who also thinks in it very much in the same ways and veins as me. Literally doing hip hop, literally doing the elements themselves by themselves can produce the same type of educational quote unquote value as like us kind of being these sort of like passive observers and a step removed from it. So that's kind of what I talk about a little bit in my paper, based on the 7 years of me working with students in Columbia, high school students with Ciphers for Justice. And that's the important thing. And again, this is why the very strength of hip hop is also its weakness, because we are, which is kind of like how black people are. It's kind of how we are. We're really inviting. We give everybody a pass card, come to the cookout, this, that, and the third. We are a very loving and forgiving people, and because of that, oftentimes we get tread on. Oftentimes,
kindness for weakness.
Kindness for weakness. You know what I'm saying? You can say that about women as well. Specifically black women, always down, ready to fight, ready to roll. They're usually the ones taken the most advantage of. Hip hop is kind of similar in that way. We let everybody in.
It's true.
we let everybody in, and that's a power to that. That's why I think
Right.
we haven't found something new or different, even though it's 40 some odd years old.
Right.
But it also means that you have people that understand its power and use it to their advantage. And now we're at a point where, to the undiscerning eye, you can't really tell the difference. Because if it sounds like it and it kind of moving like, well,
Right.
no, that's something else. It
That's
looks
it.
like it, but look closer.
Right. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. This is a great way to look at it. For those just checking us out, quick intermission. Mikal, Amin, Brooklyn Academy of Music, but so many other things. Fresh Roots still rocking, doing all the doing all the things he do. Educator, artist, educator, activist, advocate. All the A's. You got all the A's locked down. He's with us now, our first return guest on Hip Hop Can Save America. He was on the first season, as it were, and now we're bringing him back for the live. The live goes down Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, live on Facebook and Facebook and YouTube, wherever you're seeing me now, basically, and also gets uploaded to the podcast feed. So if you don't got time to sit and look at our pretty faces, it's okay. Subscribe to the podcast, Hip Hop Can Save America, wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, Joe's Podcast Shack, whatever. We'll be here for the rest of the month doing this, God willing, and then I'll take a long, deep breath and promise to never do this again because it's crazy. Maybe I'll do it again. You never know. Brought to you by, as you can see on the screen, brought to you by Funkadelic Studios, our friends and family in Funkadelic Studios. If you're in New York City, if you're an artist, a musician, a music artist, and you need rehearsal and recording space, and you've been itching to get back to it, Funkadelic Studios got you covered. Reopened and safe and secure and disinfected with fancy high-tech gizmos and making sure that you can come back in the mix. So they're a sponsor, always trying to show love to us, and we do it back. You guys have been in Funkadelic Studios once or twice, haven't you, sir?
A little bit. Yeah.
All right.
Don. What up, Don?
Yes, indeed. So shouts to them. And also shouts to everyone on the check-in. Shouts to Cindy. Shouts to Fabian, who agrees Mikal is too old.
That's all I got for you, Far.
Yep, there it is. Shouts to Tom LaRock again on check-in. Shouts to Arissa and everyone checking into this lengthy, brainy conversation about hip hop, which is how we do. But that's
your
why,
fault, Manny. You asked me to talk. Once I start talking, you know.
Hey, listen. It's the world's smartest hip hop podcast. We can't just be talking about the dumb stuff. With all that said, and you just touched on ciphers for justice. Critical thinking, using hip hop to benefit the world. We've talked about it before. You went into, I think, detail about some of your work with young people that have found themselves in less than favorable situations in life. And again, a lot of this stuff is philosophical and not theoretical because we know it works. For those who might be listening and say, "This sounds great that hip hop can do all these things," but I don't know. I've never seen it. I don't believe it. Just for the record, sir, some of the anecdotal evidence or things that you've seen in life that have shown how beneficial hip hop, critical pedagogy, ways of thinking, ways of doing things has just saved lives, helped people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll say this. Since 2013, starting with Dr. Lee Maurice Galileo and Dr. Jamila Scott, who are our founding directors, they started a program for high school students that was primarily with students that were coming from the Harlem and Bronx area, which kind of morphed into pretty much all over New York City. But they decided that there was this particular approach, radical approach to research methods called youth participatory action research, and it is a method and a process. It can be modeled and fashioned in a lot of different ways. So essentially, they wanted to create this program that helped young people take a look at social justice issues that were important to them and basically create research projects, bring in real data, analyze that data, assess it, understand it, and then diagnose and forecast solutions based on that information that they collected and analyzed. What as a award-winning and well-known spoken word poet in New York, Dr. Jamila Scott is a head. She's a hip-hop head, and she wanted the practice of that to be embodied within Ciphers for Justice. Her and I, we've known each other, we've been friends for a very long time, We worked together at Urban Word for a very long time. She asked me to come in the very beginning and co-teach with her. And I was bringing sort of the hip-hop arts component to it. And she was really developing them as researchers along with Dr. Caballero as well. What I've seen personally is young people become motivated and active in creating their own solutions around issues stemming anything from, what happens within schools, what is happening within their neighborhoods with gentrification, coming up with real world workable solutions. And part and parcel because of how they were looking at the world and then contextualize it in through the music and the art that they were creating. So there's a couple of young people that I know now that are social workers that really stepped into the fora of community activism, and a huge role in that was hip hop and their creating of it and their desire to be a part of the culture and being in the culture, because for them that became sort of kind of the standard bearer of what it is. So I've definitely seen how it can change people from that standpoint. I've seen individuals at conferences that realized that they had to rethink and reimagine exactly, what they were doing. In terms of a form and function of whatever was going on in their life, whether it's institutionally, whether it's in their community,
Right.
And that was because of hip hop, because of what they were exposed to, through hip hop culture. So I think what I've personally seen in terms of what hip hop's done for young people is it's allowed them to transform their reality. It's helped them see a different way of being and doing, and that it works, that it's possible, because they weren't seeing it in their home. They weren't seeing it in their hood. They weren't being taught it by their teachers, their principal, or their schools, despite what many schools like to tell you and say. Schools are still factories of maintaining the status quo. Our education system, as it stands, that doesn't take anything away from amazing, maverick, bright, radical teachers that are on the front lines and working with young people every single day. But as someone who's been an educator for about 15 years, from a family where my father was a Newark City school teacher for 35 plus years, born and raised in Newark.
Shouts to Brick City. I'm in
Shouts
Newark.
to the Bricks.
You know I'm out here.
Brick.
All right.
I'm absolutely for and recognize and realize the power of what teachers can do. But the structure that they're forced to operate in, the conditions that they're forced to operate in, not even just from a standpoint of like what's going on with COVID. I'm talking about in terms of how curriculum, the testing, et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole nother podcast.
Right.
Maintaining the status quo. It's not doing, let's be very critical. It's not giving us a new reality. It's giving us more of the same with like some sprinkles in it or some chocolate chips, but you're still eating the same. Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's frustrating because if you sit down with a young person for more than 5 minutes, they know what time it is. They're like, this ain't right. This makes no sense. This should be this. We need to think about that more. If you're in the presence of a young person for longer than it takes to, listen to the intro to this podcast, you will realize that many young people are profoundly deep thinkers, amazing problem solvers, and have the energy and drive and willingness to do something different. And the people that are responsible to be helping them, what do they give them? Can't do that. That's not how this works. You need to understand the rules of the game.
Right.
And then we turn around and go, y'all messing it up. No, they're just using the playbook you gave them.
Right.
Because you kind of just like sucked out of them all of the innovation and the ability. And it's because of the systems we have put them in, whether it's the education system, college, high school, whether it's the way jobs work and function. Right. All of these things are just maintaining the same. And we haven't yet figured that out. We haven't yet figured out how to be brave enough.
we say leave it at the door. Leave your creativity, leave your
All of
individualism,
that.
leave your culture, leave your language, your slang, your talk, your thinking, everything. Leave it at the door.
The greatest failure in my uneducated, unexpert opinion, the greatest failure of 20th century education is that it has completely become devoid of ingrained in it the ability to develop the skill of critical thinking. We teach them how to test. We teach them rote information. We don't help them develop the ability to think, to look at and take information, analyze it, process it, compare it, contrast it, and then use that information to kind of manifest something different. That is fundamentally not what schools do. No matter what, individuals from schools may say. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the data of what young people are dealing with.
Yeah.
The proof is if you walk inside of a school, especially and specifically, I should say, let me be clear too. Schools that are under-resourced, underfunded, quote unquote, underprivileged, right? Those schools, which is really at this point, this is the other thing people don't. Kind of majority of America right now. America is not rich.
Right.
You people are rich. Most of us are working class poor.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. 100%.
End of story. You are not learning how to think. You are learning how to follow rules and orders, and you are learning base things so that you will be a productive member within the construct of what this society currently is.
And didn't you say early, very early?
It's failing.
Yeah. Well, didn't you say very early in this show? That's how it's working like it's supposed to.
Like it's supposed to. Everything is fine and dandy.
Yeah.
Everything is fine and dandy.
Just ask, dear leader.
Woo!
Listen, Mikal, it's been great talking to you, man. We're running up on time now. Of course, we could do this for hours. I hope this was beneficial to everyone tuned in and turned up with us. I'm sure it was. I know it was. There's gems in here. Very quickly on a personal artistic note, you mentioned you have a song out. What are you working on musically? What have you got coming out? You got a paper coming out. Anything we need to watch out for? What do you got?
Yeah, absolutely. Do some quick plugs. So yes, 100%. Like I said,
Gotta be done.
I'm a pretty good talker. I think I'm a better MC. Mikal, Amin, you can check me out. FreshRootsMusic.com. All of my Instagram and social media handles, Mikal Amin, _FRM. Right now, I produced a song called COVID-16 along with my partner, friend, and brother from Italy, DJ Neo. He asked me to do a song kind of like outlining some of the things that I've been seeing and experiencing during the pandemic. 50% of all of the proceeds when you buy it at Bandcamp, it's name your price, so whatever you want. To give 50% of all of the proceeds is going to be dedicated to a particular grassroots or community organization. This month, Equality for Flatbush is going to receive the donations from some of the proceeds from the selling of the song, and you can get that at Fresh Roots, fresh like your groceries, roots like reggae.bandcamp.com. You can see the track there. It's COVID-16. And
I just showed a picture of the trailer. I just showed the viewers when you were spitting.
Oh, dope!
And I got that same. I got the same Trinity International Hip Hop Festival shirt.
Trinity, yeah. Me and Neo are forever Nomadic Wax fam. So that's all day. And then also Spectrums is an album that I'm putting together now. With production by the lovely Miss Dale Novella. She's pretty dope. Shouts to my wife.
I've heard of her.
She's pretty dope. She's kind of dope. She's a little dope.
She's super dope. She is super dope. Let me say for the record. You could be all the jokey you want. She is super dope.
I could do a whole podcast on her.
I know you could.
Pharrell Kid, and then also DJ Neo, and also my fam from Lyon, Amasia Records, is getting up on this record. So I'm going to be doing that record in the fall. I just have been asked to be on the editorial board for Equity and Excellence in Education, which is a peer-reviewed journal out of UMass Amherst. So look for things from me coming from there in the coming year. What else am I doing? Oh, there is an unofficial, official but unofficial Rabbi Darkside, Mikal Amin collaboration. We did a remix of one of his songs, Sacred Spaces. Dale Novella actually was the winner, one of the winners of that remix contest. You can check that song out. That's new. That's over there at rabbidarkside.com or saywordentertainment.com. And Yeah, I'm just in these Zoom screens. I can't say in these streets because
Out
nobody.
in
You
these,
shouldn't be in these streets. I'm in these Zoom screens,
out in these Z
doing homework.
streets.
Yeah, I'll actually be doing a performance October 14th with the University of California at Riverside, October 14th. I'll have some details up for
Shouts
that.
to my Riverside UC fam. Oh, that's what's
Yeah,
up.
man.
I know folks over
They're
there.
about it. No, you on the low. You
I
know
went
what
to
it is.
shouts to Show Improve. Shouts to everyone down with that movement, man. They're dope
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, so yeah, just check me out on the Instagram, Mikal Amin _FRM, or Mikal Amin is real here on Facebook and Twitter. I'll just be updating everybody on what I'm doing creatively and collectively with everybody and everyone.
Like I said in the beginning, you have wear many hats. You have many feet in different things. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always get inspired by first of all knowing that there's someone who thinks like you do, and there's a lot of us out there that we're not alone. Thank God. But also just to hear about all the incredible things you're doing, especially with young people, especially also at BAM. Shouts to Summer, the associate producer, the OG associate producer, Summer McCoy of this podcast. Shouts to the new G associate producer of the podcast, Cindy, who helps with the bookings and helps me out behind the scenes and helps me keep my sanity. And sir, shouts again to you for all you do on behalf of all your people. You know what I mean? Like the people, the ancestors, the culture, the young people, and the hip hop heads that look up to you and respect you, and you're an inspiration.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother. You can hang out in the back of the room, or you can go about your business. Tell Dale she is super dope, and we'll see you again soon. I hope, God willing, safely, very soon. All right. There it is, my man, my mellow, Mikal Amin, a good friend, good artist, good person, good academic, good philosopher. He thinks very deeply. So check him out on all the things. Be sure to follow up with all he does. I guess I'll have to have him back a third time because he's always doing something new and interesting and exciting. Again, in the intersection of hip hop and other areas besides just SoundCloud. So, man, I got some talkers the last couple of days. Jesus Lord. Look. I'm here Monday through Thursday for the month of September, live at 1 p.m. Eastern on whatever thing you're looking at me here. These will then be transferred to the podcast feed with a special episode drop on Friday. Programming note, I'll probably drop a couple episodes this weekend before we get back to the lives.
I don't think so.
I owe a couple of episodes. So I'll get back to that ASAP. And we'll give you more stuff coming up. So tune in, turn up, share this. I always wait to the end to say it. It's right up here. If you feel so inclined to support this work, it's a lot of work. Believe me, it's a lot of work. And I want to have more associate producers, and I want to give them more money. It's not just for me. I want us to amplify and explode this a lot more. So allow me, help me help them, help me help us, help me help the mission. Patreon.com/Manny Faces. Basically, buy me a cup of coffee every month, and it'd be awesome if you did. If you don't, pay it forward by sharing this. You should have been sharing it all the time we were talking. I'm very disappointed in you. But if you haven't done it by now, do it now. Share it. Follow us. Do all the things. Back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to leave you with two things that I want you to do. Homework for next week. Well, one thing is homework for next week. Next week, I will be having somebody who appeared in this. This is... the Netflix show, The Remix, Hip Hop and Fashion. I will be having someone who appeared in this documentary next week on the show. So watch it. If you haven't already, go to Netflix. We all have Netflix. Go check out The Remix, Hip Hop and Fashion. Great story about the intersection of hip hop and the fashion industry. Great interviews. Misa Hilton featured prominently. You saw Dapper Dan right there. Do check that out. We'll be on that next week. Someone who appeared in this documentary and is at the very forefront of the expert analysis and understanding of hip hop and fashion on the show next week. And lastly, a good friend has released new music. I want to say shout out to the mighty homeboy Sandman. New album coming out in October called, I don't know what the name of the album is. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's Don't Feed the Monster. Produced entirely by Quelle Chris. It's going to be a dope album. It is called Don't Feed the Monster, but the newest song from Homeboy Sandman, Trauma. I promised a long time ago that anything this man ever does, I will tell people about. And I listened to this, and I'm glad I said that, and I will stick to that because it is worthy of your time and your ears. I hope I've been worthy of your time and your ears. My name is Manny Faces. You can find me anywhere on the Googles. Just find me and wherever the hell you want to find me. I'll be back tomorrow. God willing, thank you. I got to go take a nap. I love you. Bye. Peace.